The night Rachel Adams opened the wrong door, all of Queens had gone black. No streetlights, no elevator hum, no television voices bleeding through thin apartment walls. Just rain hitting the fire escape like 1,000 nervous fingers. And somewhere below, the distant growl of engines that did not belong in her neighborhood. Rachel stood barefoot in the hallway of her 6th-floor apartment building, one hand gripping a flashlight, the other pressed against the peeling wallpaper, to guide herself through the dark. Behind her, her 7-year-old son, Noah, whispered from their doorway. "Mom?" "Stay inside," Rachel said. Her voice was calm because it had to be, because single mothers did not get the luxury of panic, because fear was something she swallowed every morning with cheap coffee before walking to the supermarket for a 10-hour shift. The hallway smelled like wet concrete, old paint, and something metallic. Then came the knock. Not from her door, from the empty apartment next to hers. 3 weak taps. Rachel froze. Apartment 6B had been vacant for almost a year. The landlord had promised to fix the broken windows, the warped floorboards, the water stain spreading across the ceiling like a bruise. He never did. Nobody lived there. Nobody should have been inside. Another knock came. Softer this time. A scrape. A breath. Rachel lifted the flashlight, her heart thudding hard enough to hurt. "Noah," she said without turning around. "Lock our door." "But..." "Now." The lock clicked behind her. Rachel moved towards 6B. Every instinct told her to go back inside. Call 911. Wait. Pretend she had heard nothing. But then she heard a man's voice through the door. Low, broken, almost gone. "Please." Rachel's fingers tightened around the flashlight. She had heard men beg before. Customers at the supermarket who forgot their wallets. Her ex when he wanted forgiveness he had not earned. Drunk neighbors when rent came due. But this voice did not sound weak. It sounded like power being dragged across broken glass. Rachel pushed the door. It opened. The flashlight beam cut through the abandoned apartment and landed on a man sitting against the wall beneath the window. He wore a black shirt soaked through with rain. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead. One hand pressed against his ribs. The other clutched a photograph. So tightly, the paper had bent between his fingers. Rachel took one step closer. Then she saw his face. Even half hidden in shadow, she knew him. Everyone in New York knew him. Luca Moretti, the man the news called a businessman. The man police never named directly. The man whispered about in bodegas, laundromats, courtrooms, and church basements. The man with half the city afraid to breathe too loudly when his black SUVs rolled by. New York's most feared mafia boss was bleeding on the floor of the empty apartment next to hers. Rachel's breath vanished. Luca slowly lifted his eyes to her. They were not pleading eyes. Not exactly. They were dark, sharp, controlled even now. Eyes that had given orders men did not survive ignoring. Eyes that should have terrified her. But in that moment, he looked at Rachel as if he had not expected heaven to open a door in a building like this. Rachel raised the flashlight higher. "What are you doing here?" His gaze dropped to her body. Her bare feet. Her oversized sleep shirt. Her soft curves. Her strong arms. Her face. Full of fear. She refused to show completely. Then to the locked apartment door behind her. "Your son," he said. Rachel's blood turned cold. "What did you say?" Luca's hand tightened around the photograph. Rachel stepped forward and snatched it from him before he could stop her. The flashlight shook. It was a photo of her and Noah, taken outside Noah's school 2 winters ago. Rachel remembered the day because she had been late for work and Noah had insisted on wearing his dinosaur gloves. She remembered bending down to fix his scarf. She remembered laughing when he kissed her cheek. She did not remember anyone taking a picture. Rachel looked back at Luca. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Why do you have this?" Luca closed his eyes for half a second, as if pain had finally found a way past his discipline. "Don't let anyone know I'm here." Rachel stared at him. Then, from the street below, headlights swept across the ceiling. Once, twice, 3 times. Black SUVs. Rachel backed toward the doorway. "No," she whispered. No, you don't get to bring this to my door." Luca forced himself to stand. It was not graceful. His hand hit the wall. His jaw clenched. But even wounded, even soaked, even barely holding himself upright, Luca Moretti looked dangerous enough to make the darkness step aside. He reached toward her. Rachel flinched. He stopped before touching her. That was the first thing she noticed. He could have grabbed her, could have forced silence, could have ordered her into fear. Instead, his hand hovered in the air between them, controlled by something stronger than pain. "Rachel," he said. Her name in his mouth was worse than any threat. "How do you know my name?" The engines below went silent. Luca looked past her toward her apartment. "Because I know everyone who has ever come close to hurting you." A chill moved through her. Before she could speak, Noah's small voice came from behind the locked door. "Mum?" Luca's expression changed. It was almost nothing. A flicker in the eyes. A tightening in the throat. But Rachel saw it. The most feared man in New York looked afraid. Not for himself. For her son. Rachel turned toward her door. And somewhere downstairs, heavy footsteps entered the building. Luca whispered, "Turn off the flashlight." Rachel did. The hallway vanished. Only rain remained. And in the dark, Luca Moretti moved in front of her like a wall. Rachel had always believed fear made noise. Sirens, screams, glass breaking, men yelling in stairwells. But real fear, she learned that night, was silent. It was the sound of Luca Moretti standing between her and the stairwell, without making a single breath louder than necessary. It was the way his body shifted, barely visible in the blackout, placing himself closer to danger and her farther from it. It was the way he did not ask permission to protect her, yet somehow did not touch her without care. The footsteps climbed. One floor, then another. Rachel's back pressed against her own apartment door. Noah was inside, safe for now. But if the men in the stairwell reached the 6th floor, safe would become a memory. Luca leaned closer, his voice low enough that it belonged only to her. "When I tell you, go inside. Lock the door. Do not open it, unless you hear me say your name twice." Rachel stared at the outline of him. "You're insane if you think I'm leaving you bleeding in a hallway." For the first time, even in the darkness, she sensed his surprise. Most people probably obeyed Luca Moretti. Rachel Adams had spent too much of her life being ordered around by men who mistook exhaustion for weakness. Luca's voice became quieter. "This is not a negotiation." "Then stop talking like I work for you." The footsteps paused below. Luca turned his head. Rachel saw the exact moment the man disappeared and the predator arrived. He moved fast. 1 second he was in front of her. The next, he was at the stairwell door. A shadow met another shadow. There was a low impact, a muffled grunt. Then the sound of a body hitting the wall. Rachel clamped a hand over her mouth. Another man came up. Luca took him down with brutal efficiency, controlled and terrifying, using the darkness like it belonged to him. No wasted movement, no rage, just survival turned into art. Then a third figure appeared at the stairwell. He did not attack. He said, "Boss." Rachel's heart slammed. A man in a dark suit stepped into the hallway, hands raised just enough to show loyalty. Even in the blackout, Rachel could tell he was one of Luca's men. Tall, broad, calm in the way only dangerous people were calm. "Caruso's men are 2 blocks out," he said. "We have 3 minutes." Luca's hand pressed against his ribs again. Rachel stepped forward before thinking, "You need a hospital." The suited man looked at her. His expression changed with shock. Not because of Luca's condition, because Rachel had spoken to Luca Moretti like she had any right. Luca looked at his man. "Enzo, clear the south stairs." "Boss, we need to move you. Clear the stairs." Enzo hesitated. Luca's voice dropped. "Now." Enzo obeyed. Rachel hated how that word felt in the hallway. Obeyed. As if the whole world bent around Luca's pain. Luca turned back to Rachel. "You and Noah are coming with me." Rachel laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "Absolutely not. You are no longer safe here." "I wasn't safe the second you crawled into the empty apartment holding a photo of my child." His jaw tightened. There it was. A crack in the marble. "Good." Rachel stepped closer. Anger burning hotter than fear now. "Who took that picture?" Luca did not answer. "Who took it?" His eyes held hers. "I did." Rachel slapped him. The sound cracked through the hallway. For 1 stunned second, even the rain seemed to stop. Luca's face turned slightly from the impact. Slowly, he looked back at her. He did not touch his cheek, did not threaten her, did not even look angry. He looked like he deserved it. Rachel's voice trembled. "You watched us?" "Yes." "For how long?" Luca's silence told her everything. Rachel felt sick. "Mom?" Noah called from behind the door again, closer now. Rachel turned. Baby, stay back. But the door opened before she could stop him. Noah stood there in dinosaur pajamas, clutching the small wooden baseball bat Rachel kept near the entryway because pepper spray did not feel like enough anymore. His eyes went from Rachel to Luca, then widened. You're hurt, Noah said. Luca went still. Not tense, not cold. Still, as if one small sentence from a child had reached a place bullets could not. Rachel moved in front of Noah immediately. Noah, inside. But Noah peeked around her, innocent and sleepy, and far too brave. He's the man from outside. Rachel's body went numb. What? Noah looked up at her. The man in the black car. He waits downstairs sometimes. Rachel slowly turned toward Luca. He closed his eyes. Noah, she whispered, how many times have you seen him? Noah shrugged. A lot. He never talks to me. But one time when Mr. Ellis yelled at you about rent, the man got out of the car. Then Mr. Ellis stopped yelling. Rachel remembered that night. The landlord had backed away from her, so suddenly she thought he had seen a ghost. Maybe he had. Luca Moretti standing in the rain. Watching. Waiting. Protecting or controlling Rachel did not yet know the difference. A crash echoed from below. Enzo's voice shouted something in Italian. Luca's head snapped toward the stairs. Then he looked at Rachel. Now you understand. No, she said. I understand less. Another crash. Closer. Luca reached out, not for her arm, but for the doorframe beside her, steadying himself as blood spread darker across his shirt. His voice lowered. If you stay here, they will use your son to open a door that should have stayed buried. Rachel's anger faltered. What door? His eyes moved to Noah. Then back to her. The one your mother died keeping shut. Rachel stopped breathing. Her mother had died of a heart attack when Rachel was 19. At least, that was what the hospital report said. A sudden collapse outside a laundromat. No witnesses. No explanation. Luca watched the knowledge hit her face. I can explain, he said. The lights flickered once overhead, then died again. From below came the unmistakable sound of men entering the building. Luca stepped closer, his voice rough with pain. But not here. Rachel did not remember deciding to leave. She remembered grabbing Noah's coat. Remembered stuffing his inhaler, a packet of crackers, and the envelope of rent money into her purse. Remembered Luca leaning against the hallway wall, refusing to sit, refusing to fall. She remembered Enzo returning with 2 more men in dark suits and a look that made every second feel expensive. Most of all, she remembered Noah slipping his small hand into Luca's. Rachel nearly stopped breathing. Luca looked down at the child's hand in his like it was a loaded weapon. Noah said, You can lean on me if you need to. Luca's face hardened, but his fingers closed gently around Noah's hand. Not enough to hold him, just enough not to reject him. Rachel saw it and hated that it hurt her. They moved down the south stairs in darkness. Rain blew through a broken window somewhere below, cold and sharp. Luca walked behind Rachel and Noah, despite being wounded. Every time she glanced back, he was watching the stairwell above them, not his own steps. On the 3rd floor, someone screamed from behind a door. On the 2nd, Enzo stopped. Luca lifted one hand. Everything froze. Then Rachel heard it. Men speaking softly near the lobby. Not tenant. Not police. Predators. Enzo whispered. Service exit. They turned into a narrow maintenance hallway Rachel had never noticed before. The building seemed to open secret bones for Luca. Behind a rusted door, a stairwell led down to a basement corridor, lit by emergency red bulbs. Noah clung to Rachel's coat. Mom, are we in trouble? Rachel wanted to lie. Instead, she touched his hair. We're getting out. Luca's voice came from behind her. He will not be touched. Rachel turned. Rainwater dripped from his hair. Blood darkened his shirt. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. You don't get to make promises to my son, she said. Luca held her gaze. I make promises to you. The words landed too close, too intimate, too wrong for a man she should have feared. At the end of the corridor, they reached a metal door. Enzo opened it to the alley. Rain exploded around them. 3 black SUVs waited with headlights off. Rachel stopped. The scene looked like every nightmare her neighborhood whispered about. Men in black coats, tinted windows, engines purring like animals. Luca moved beside her. You get in first, he said. I don't know where you're taking us. A safe house. I don't trust you. His eyes dropped briefly to Noah, then returned to Rachel. I know. That answer unsettled her more than any threat. Because he did know. and he still protected her like her distrust did not change his purpose. A sound split the alley. Gunfire, not close enough to hit them, but close enough to turn the night into chaos. Rachel grabbed Noah and ducked. Luca moved before anyone else. He stepped in front of them, his body shielding both Rachel and her son, as his men returned controlled fire toward the far end of the alley. The rain turned headlights into blurred halos. Glass shattered somewhere. Enzo shouted. A rival car screeched around the corner. Rachel's heart clawed at her ribs. Luca did not look at the gunman. He looked at her. Rachel. His voice cut through everything. She understood. She pulled Noah into the SUV. Luca got in after them and collapsed against the seat with a sharp inhale he could not fully hide. The doors slammed. The SUV tore into the storm. Rachel held Noah against her chest, while New York blurred outside the windows, traffic lights dead, rain like silver wires, sirens rising from somewhere behind them. Across from her, Luca pressed a white cloth to his side. His eyes stayed on the rear window. Rachel stared at him. The man had shielded her from bullets. The man had watched her son. The man had a photograph of her hidden in his fist. She should have felt grateful. She felt furious, terrified, and something else she refused to name. Noah, still pressed to Rachel's side, whispered, "Is he going to die?" Luca answered before Rachel could. "No." Noah looked at him. "Promise?" Luca's gaze softened by a fraction. "I don't break promises to your mother." Rachel's throat tightened. "You don't know me," she said. Luca looked at her then. Really looked. At the damp curls stuck to her cheeks. At the softness of her body under the oversized coat. At the strength in the way she held her son. At the fear she turned into anger because anger was easier to carry. His voice was quiet. "I know you worked a double shift last Thursday and still walked Mrs. Alvarez's groceries upstairs because her knees hurt." Rachel went still. "I know you skip dinner at the end of the month so Noah thinks there's enough food. I know you keep cash in a coffee tin above the fridge. I know you hate roses because your ex brought them when he wanted forgiveness. I know you talk to your mother's photograph when you think Noah is asleep." Rachel's eyes burned. "That is not knowing me," she whispered. "That is surveillance." Luca absorbed the words like punishment. Yes. The honesty knocked the breath out of her. He did not dress it up, did not call it fate, did not pretend obsession was romance. He let it sit between them, ugly and true. Rachel leaned forward. "Why?" The SUV passed beneath the elevated train tracks. Shadows moved over Luca's face. "Because the first time I saw you," he said, "a man twice your size had cornered you outside the supermarket and you still told him no." Rachel remembered. A drunk customer. A hand around her wrist. A threat hissed through beer breath. She had twisted free and walked away shaking so hard she nearly dropped her keys. The next day, the man was gone. The manager said he had moved. Rachel's mouth went dry. "That was you?" Luca did not deny it. "You had no right." "No," he said. "I had a debt." "To me?" His gaze darkened. "To your mother." Before Rachel could ask another question, Luca's body shifted. His face tightened. The cloth at his side was soaked red. Enzo turned from the front passenger seat. "Boss." Luca's jaw clenched. "Not now." Rachel stared at the wound. "You're going to bleed out because you're too proud to pass out in front of me?" His eyes flicked to hers. "Something like that." Rachel leaned over, pressing her hand hard against the cloth. Luca inhaled sharply. Noah gasped. Rachel did not move her hand. "You can be feared by the whole city tomorrow," she said. "Tonight, you're going to listen." Enzo's eyebrows rose. Nobody spoke to Luca like that. Luca looked at Rachel's hand pressing against his wound, then at her face. A strange emotion passed through his eyes. Not weakness. Recognition. As if he had finally found someone who could stand close to the monster and still tell him to sit down. "Enzo," Luca said quietly. "Yes, boss?" "Drive faster." The safe house was not a house. It was a penthouse hidden above a private medical clinic near the East River, behind a lobby with marble floors, private elevators, and security cameras that followed Rachel like eyes. By the time they arrived, Luca was pale enough that even Noah stopped asking questions. Doctors appeared from nowhere. Not hospital doctors. Mafia doctors. Quiet people in pressed shirts who did not ask for insurance, names, or explanations. Rachel refused to leave the room. Luca sat on the edge of a surgical table, shirt open, blood wiped from his skin. His body was marked with old scars, each one telling a story she did not want to imagine. He looked less like a man and more like a map of every war he had survived. Noah had been taken by a kind older woman named Teresa to a room down the hall with blankets and hot chocolate. Rachel had allowed it only after Luca gave one command. No one enters that room without her permission. Her permission, not his. The doctor cleaned Luca's wound and prepared to stitch it. Luca did not make a sound. Rachel stood across from him, arms folded. Does it hurt? His eyes lifted to hers. Yes. She had not expected honesty. The doctor paused as if Luca had just confessed to murder in church. Rachel looked away first. The room was too bright, too sterile, too intimate. Luca's black shirt lay ruined on the floor. His suit jacket was gone. Without the armor, he looked younger, still dangerous, but human in a way she did not appreciate. Tell me about my mother, Rachel said. Luca's gaze hardened. Not here. You said that in my hallway. We're here now. The doctor finished the first stitch. Luca did not react. Your mother's name was Elena Adams, he said. Rachel's chest tightened at the sound of it. She worked nights at a laundromat in Queens, but before that, she was a bookkeeper for my father. Rachel shook her head. No. My mother folded sheets for a living. She did both. That's impossible. It was how she survived. Rachel stepped closer. Survived what? Luca looked at the doctor. Leave. The doctor hesitated. Luca said nothing else. The doctor left. Rachel and Luca were alone under the white light. Outside the window, the East River rolled black beneath the rain. Luca's voice became lower. 20 years ago, my father discovered that the Caruso family had infiltrated ours. Names. Accounts. Judges. Police. Every person bought. Every murder ordered. Every child hidden to secure future claims. He kept records in a ledger. Rachel's stomach turned. My mother had it? She copied it. Why? Because she knew my father would use it to start a war. Rachel frowned. And what did she do? Luca looked at her like the answer still haunted him. She saved me. The room seemed to narrow. I was 16, he continued. My father's men were killing everyone connected to the leak. Your mother found me in the back room of the laundromat after I had been shot. She hid me under bags of linen while men searched the building. Rachel pictured her mother's hands. Warm, firm, always smelling faintly of soap and peppermint lotion. She told me, Luca said, that power without mercy was just cowardice wearing a crown. Rachel's eyes stung. That sounded like her. What happened to her? Luca's face closed. Caruso found out she had the copy. Rachel's breath broke. No. She ran. She hid the ledger. She changed jobs, changed routines, protected you. My mother died of a heart attack. Luca's silence was answer enough. Rachel stepped back as if he had struck her. No. I am sorry. The words were simple. Almost too simple for the size of what they carried. Rachel's voice shook. You knew? Not then. When? 5 years ago. Her eyes lifted slowly. Noah was 7. 5 years ago was when her ex, Daniel, had disappeared for 3 weeks and returned with expensive shoes, a new watch, and a story that never made sense. Rachel felt the floor tilt. Why 5 years ago? Luca looked toward the door, toward the hallway where Noah was. Because that was when your son's name appeared in a Caruso file. Rachel's body went cold. Noah? Luca's jaw tightened. Daniel Adams was not just your ex. Rachel barely heard him. He was a courier for Vincent Caruso. A memory flashed. Daniel coming home late, whispering on the fire escape, telling Rachel she asked too many questions, holding Noah too tightly when strangers passed them on the street. Rachel's voice dropped. Is Daniel dead? No. She hated the relief that came. Then she hated what Luca said next. He is working with Caruso again. Rachel covered her mouth. Noah's father. The man who had left them with unpaid bills and birthday cards that stopped coming. The man Noah barely remembered. The man Rachel had once loved, because loneliness can make a liar look like shelter. What does he want? Luca's eyes held hers. Your mother's ledger, and he believes Noah can lead him to it. Rachel laughed, but it came out broken. Noah is 7. Your mother left something with him. No, she didn't. She did. Rachel shook her head. I would know. Luca looked at her with unbearable steadiness. Would you? The question sliced deep because Rachel suddenly remembered the small Silver Street Michael medal Noah wore around his neck. Her mother had given it to him as a baby, saying, "Every child needs a guardian." Rachel turned toward the door. Luca saw the realization. Rachel. She moved fast. He stood too quickly and nearly staggered. She ignored him. By the time Rachel reached Noah's room, Teresa was reading him a story on a velvet couch that looked more expensive than Rachel's monthly rent. Noah's shoes were off. His cheeks were pink from hot chocolate. For one terrible second, he looked safe. Rachel knelt in front of him. "Baby, let me see your necklace." Noah touched it. "Grandma's angel?" "Yes." He lifted it from under his shirt. Rachel opened the clasp with trembling fingers. The metal looked the same as it always had. Silver. Wern. Familiar. Then she turned it over. There was a seam along the edge, so tiny she had never noticed. Luca appeared in the doorway behind her, one hand braced against the frame. Rachel stared at the metal. Inside was not paper, not a key, a small black chip. Noah looked between them. "Mom?" Rachel closed her fist around it. And in the doorway, Luca Moretti looked like a man realizing the war he had delayed for years had finally reached the one person he could not survive losing. The next morning, Rachel woke in a bedroom with silk curtains, a locked door, and her son sleeping peacefully beside her. For one suspended second, she forgot everything. Then, she remembered Luca bleeding in the dark. The photograph, the black SUVs, her mother, the chip hidden inside Noah's necklace. Rachel sat up. The room was larger than her whole apartment. Soft gray walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city washed clean by rain. Someone had placed folded clothes on a chair for her jeans, a cream sweater, undergarments still in packaging, all in her size, her exact size. Rachel stared at them for too long. There was a time when that would have embarrassed her, a man knowing her body, a dangerous man, no less. But the clothes were not chosen to make her smaller, tighter, hidden. They were soft, comfortable, elegant, as if whoever selected them had not guessed, as if Luca had known. Rachel hated that warmth rose in her chest. She dressed quietly, checked Noah's breathing, then stepped into the hallway. 2 guards stood outside. They straightened immediately. Rachel lifted an eyebrow. "Am I a guest or a prisoner?" Neither answered. "Great," she muttered. "That clears it up." A voice came from the end of the hall. "You are under protection." Rachel turned. Luca stood near the windows in a black suit, freshly dressed, too composed for a man who had been stitched up hours ago. His face was pale, but his presence still filled the penthouse, like a storm pretending to be architecture. Rachel walked toward him. Protection usually lets people leave, not when leaving gets them killed. "I have work. I called your manager." Rachel stopped. "You what?" "He thinks you have the flu." "You called my job?" "Yes." "You had no right." "I know." The same answer again. Honest. Infuriating. Rachel stepped closer. "Stop agreeing when I'm angry. It makes me want to throw something." Luca's mouth almost moved. Almost. Not a smile. Luca Moretti did not smile that easily. But the near expression was somehow worse. It made him look less impossible. Rachel folded her arms. "What happens now?" Luca looked at the closed bedroom door where Noah slept. "We find the ledger before Caruso does. And then I end this." The calm way he said it made Rachel's stomach tighten. "You mean kill him?" Luca's eyes returned to her. "I mean make sure he never reaches your son again." "That's not an answer. It is the only one I can give you." Rachel looked out at the city. Morning traffic moved below, normal and unaware. People buying coffee. Kids going to school. Women like her clocking into shifts, scanning coupons, worrying about rent. Her life was still down there. Somewhere. Maybe. "What if I give the chip to the police?" she asked. Luca's voice hardened. "You would be dead before lunch." "You don't know that. I own enough police to know Caruso owns the rest." Rachel turned slowly. The words should have disgusted her. They did, but they also explained why her mother had never gone to the police, why she had hidden a ledger in pieces, why she had trusted a baby's necklace more than a badge. Rachel rubbed her forehead. "I need to think." "You can think here." "Of course I can. In your luxury cage." Luca's gaze sharpened. "I do not cage women." "No? You just watch them, follow them, move them, dress them, call their jobs, and put men outside their doors?" Silence. Rachel regretted the words as soon as she saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not anger. Shame. He looked away first. "You're right." That stopped her. Luca walked to a cabinet and opened it. Inside were files, dozens of them. He pulled one out and placed it on the glass table between them. Rachel did not move. "What is that?" "Everything my people collected on you." Her stomach sank. "Why are you showing me?" "Because you deserve to know the size of the violation before deciding how much to hate me." Rachel stared at him. Then she opened the file. Photos. Schedules. Names. Copies of bills. School pickup times. Notes on Noah's asthma. Her work shifts. Daniel's last known addresses. Her landlord's debts. Men who had followed her and then stopped. Some pages were marked with Luca's handwriting. Do not approach. Remove threat quietly. Increase security after 9 p.m. No direct contact. No direct contact. No direct contact. Rachel's throat tightened despite herself. He had crossed every line, but he had also drawn lines around her world to keep others out. She hated how complicated that made her anger. One photo slipped from the file. Rachel picked it up. It showed her outside the supermarket at night, laughing at something Noah had said. She looked tired. Hair messy. Uniform wrinkled. Body full and soft and real. Not posed. Not polished. But the photo did not make her look small. It made her look luminous. Rachel swallowed. Luca watched her carefully. Why this one? She asked. He did not pretend not to understand. Because you looked happy. Her chest ached. Is that so rare? For people like me? He said. Yes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Rachel closed the file. You don't get to decide my life because you feel guilty. No. You don't get to use my mother as a reason to control me. No. And you don't get to look at me like that. Luca's eyes darkened. Like what? Rachel should have walked away. Instead, she said, like I'm something you lost before you ever had it. His silence changed. It became charged, heavy, dangerous in a different way. Luca stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough for Rachel to feel the heat of him beneath the cold suit. I've lost many things, he said. I know the difference. Rachel's breath caught. Behind them, Noah's bedroom door opened. The moment shattered. Noah stepped out, rubbing his eyes. Mom? Rachel immediately moved away from Luca. Luca did not. He stayed exactly where he was, but all the intensity in him locked down. The Mafia Boss returned, smooth, controlled, untouchable. Noah looked around the penthouse. Are we rich now? Rachel almost laughed. The sound came out half broken. No, baby. Noah looked at Luca. Are you? Enzo, standing near the far wall, coughed into his fist. Luca considered the question with grave seriousness. Yes. Noah nodded. Do you have pancakes? Rachel closed her eyes. Luca looked at Teresa, who had appeared silently from the kitchen. Pancakes, he said. Teresa smiled. Of course. Noah walked toward the kitchen, then paused beside Luca. You look better. Luca looked down at him. I am. Good, Noah said. Mom worries. Then he disappeared into the kitchen. Rachel and Luca stood in the aftermath of that small truth. Mom worries. Rachel looked away. Luca's voice lowered. He should not have had to learn fear this young. Rachel's answer came sharp. Then keep your war away from him. His chaza held hers. I tried. That was the worst part. She believed him. For 3 days, Rachel lived inside Luca Moretti's penthouse, like a woman trapped between a nightmare and a dream too dangerous to want. The city below kept moving. But inside the penthouse, time was measured in whispers, locked doors, encrypted calls, and men arriving with files they stopped discussing when Rachel entered. She hated being protected by people who would not explain anything, so she started listening. Rachel had spent years as a cashier. People underestimated cashiers. They talked over them, around them, through them. They forgot a woman scanning cereal and counting change could hear everything. By the second day, Rachel knew Vincent Caruso had returned to New York after 10 years in exile. She knew Daniel had been seen near the old laundromat where her mother once worked. She knew the chip from Noah's necklace was encrypted and incomplete. By the third day, she knew Luca was hiding something worse. Not from his enemies. From her. That night, after Noah fell asleep watching cartoons with Teresa, Rachel followed the sound of voices to Luca's study. The door was slightly open. Inside, Luca stood behind a massive desk, one hand flat on the wood. Enzo stood across from him. Tense. She can't know yet, Luca said. Rachel froze. Enzo's voice was low. She will find out. Not until I know if it's true. If Daniel talks first, she'll think you lied. I did lie. No, Enzo said. You withheld. Luca looked up sharply. Do not soften it. Rachel pushed open the door. Both men turned. Her heart was already pounding. What don't I know? Enzo looked at Luca. Luca's face closed in that familiar, infuriating way. Rachel stepped inside. No, don't you dare turn into stone now. What don't I know? Luca said nothing. Rachel's voice dropped. Is it about Noah? The silence answered. Her whole body went cold. What about my son? Luca looked at Enzo. Leave. Enzo did. Rachel stood across from Luca's desk. The city glittered behind him. Cold, beautiful, indifferent. Luca reached into a drawer and took out a photograph. He placed it on the desk. Rachel did not want to look. She did anyway. It showed Daniel Adams standing beside Vincent Caruso in what looked like an underground club. Between them stood Rachel's mother. Alive. Older than Rachel remembered her being when the photo must have been taken. Rachel's voice faded. When was this? 8 years ago. Rachel shook her head. No. My mother died 8 years ago. Luca's eyes were dark with something like regret. This was taken 3 weeks before she died. Rachel stared at her mother's face. Elena Adams looked afraid, but not for herself. She was holding something wrapped in a blue blanket. Rachel's hand trembled as she touched the edge of the photo. Noah had been a baby then. What is this? Your mother met with Caruso before she died. Why? I think she was trying to negotiate your safety. Rachel's throat closed. With my baby? Luca's jaw flexed. She may have believed Noah was in danger from both families. Both? His silence was a blade. Rachel stepped back. No. Rachel. No. Say it. Luca came around the desk slowly. She backed away. Say it. He stopped. His face looked carved from pain. There is a possibility Noah is not Daniel's son. Rachel's ears rang. The room tilted. No. I'm sorry. Stop saying that. Luca took one step forward. Rachel. Do not say my name like you have the right to stand close to me after this. He stopped immediately. Good. She needed him to stop. She needed the room to stop spinning. Daniel had been there when Noah was born. Not kind. Not steady. But there. Rachel had built years of anger around one certainty. He was the man who abandoned his child. Now even that certainty was breaking apart. Whose? She whispered. Luca's voice was barely audible. Caruso believes Noah is Moretti blood. Rachel looked at him. The world went silent. No. Luca's eyes held hers. Noah is not mine, he said immediately. Rachel hated the rush of relief that came, then hated herself for it. My younger brother, Matteo, disappeared 8 years ago. He was involved with a woman connected to Daniel's crew. We believe Daniel may have taken credit for a child that was never his to secure leverage. Rachel pressed both hands to her mouth. Noah, her baby, turned into leverage before he could speak. Rachel's tears came fast and furious now. Not delicate, not pretty. The kind of tears that came when a woman had been strong for so long, her body finally revolted. Luca looked like he would rather take another bullet than watch her cry. He reached for her. Stopped. His hand closed into a fist at his side. That restraint broke something in her. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was not sure. You had enough information to watch us for years, but not enough courage to tell me the truth? The words hit him hard. Good. Let them. Luca's voice was rough. Yes. Rachel laughed through tears. At least you're honest when it hurts. I never wanted him to be part of this. He is a child, Luca. He is not a bloodline. Not a key. Not a claim. Not a secret. I know. No, you don't. Men like you always say you know. Then you build wars around names and blood and power like children are property. His expression changed. Something in him opened. You're right. Rachel stared at him. I was raised to believe blood was destiny, Luca said. That family was ownership. That love was weakness. That children were heirs or threats. His voice lowered. Then I watched you with Noah. Rachel's tears slowed. Luca looked at the floor for a moment, as if the confession cost him more than blood. You made motherhood look like defiance, he said. Like every ordinary act was a rebellion against everything I was taught. Packing his lunch, fixing his scarf, standing in front of him when you were afraid. His eyes lifted. You were the first person I ever saw protect without wanting to possess. Rachel could not speak. The room felt too small for the truth between them. Luca stepped closer, then stopped again, asking without asking. Rachel hated that she understood. She hated more that she wanted to say yes. But before she could move, an alarm sounded through the penthouse. Sharp, cold, immediate. Enzo burst in. Boss, the school. Rachel turned. What? Enzo looked at her, then Luca. Someone leaked where the boy goes. Caruso's people are moving toward the building. Rachel's heart stopped. Noah's not there. Luca's face went deadly calm. No, Enzo said. But the press is. Rachel frowned. Press? Luca looked at the screens on the wall. They came alive one by one. News vans outside Noah's elementary school. Reporters. Cameras. A headline forming at the bottom of one screen. Local single mother linked to Moretti crime family. Rachel staggered back. Her face. Noah's school. Their building. Their lives. Dragged into public. Luca stared at the screen. The room changed temperature. Rachel had seen him dangerous before. This was different. This was not cold. This was controlled devastation. Vincent Caruso had not attacked with bullets. He had attacked Rachel's motherhood, her privacy, her son's safety. Luca turned to Enzo. Find who gave them her name. Enzo nodded. Rachel grabbed Luca's arm. He looked at her hand, then at her face. No violence near the school, she said. His jaw tightened. Rachel, no. You listen to me. Those are children, teachers, parents. You do not turn my son's school into one of your battlefields. The men in the room went still. Luca looked at her for a long second. Then he said, no violence near the school. Rachel released him. The command repeated through the room. Phones came out. Men moved. Luca turned back to the screen. A reporter stood outside the school gates, speaking into a microphone. Behind her, Rachel saw Mrs. Rivera, Noah's teacher, trying to shield children from cameras. Rachel's hands shook. Luca looked at her. What do you want? The question stunned her. Not, what should I do? Not, what is useful? What do you want? Rachel looked at the screen. At her life being torn open. Then at the man who could destroy the room and everyone in it. I want my son's name out of their mouths. Luca nodded once. Done. They arrived at the school in a convoy of black SUVs under a sky heavy with rain. Every camera turned. Rachel sat in the back seat, Noah beside her, holding her hand. Luca sat across from them, silent, composed, terrifying. Noah had wanted to come. Rachel had said no. Then Noah had asked, if people are saying bad things about us, shouldn't they see we're not scared? Rachel had almost cried. Luca had looked out the window, jaw tight, saying nothing. Now, as the SUV stopped outside the school, Rachel felt every old insecurity rise in her body like ghosts. Every stranger who had judged her. Every person who had looked at her curves and decided softness meant weakness. Every woman who had been told to hide, shrink, apologize, take less space. Cameras waited outside. So did cruelty. Luca opened his door first. The noise doubled. Reporters shouted his name. He stepped into the rain in a black coat, looking like the city had been built around his silence. His men formed a line behind him. Then he turned and held out his hand to Rachel. The cameras caught it. The entire crowd seemed to pause. Rachel looked at his hand. She did not take it because she needed help. She took it because she chose to walk out. Her fingers slid into his. His grip was warm, steady, careful. Noah climbed out behind her, and Luca shifted immediately, placing his body slightly in front of the boy without blocking Rachel. A reporter shouted, Miss Adams, are you involved with the Moretti crime family? Rachel flinched. Luca's hand tightened, not possessive, grounding. Another reporter yelled, is your son Luca Moretti's child? Rachel's vision flashed white with rage. Luca moved. One step. That was all. The crowd fell quiet. He looked directly into the cameras. His voice was calm, low, lethal. You will not speak about her child again. The reporters swallowed. Luca continued. Rachel Adams is a private citizen. A mother. A woman whose name was dragged into a war. She did not choose by men too cowardly to face me directly. Rachel stared at him. Rain ran down his face, his coat, his hands. He looked every inch the feared boss. But his words were not about owning her. They were about drawing fire away from her. If anyone wants to ask questions, Luca said, ask me. A reporter, braver or stupider than the rest, called out. What is she to you? The question struck like lightning. Rachel looked at Luca. So did every camera. For a moment, he said nothing. His eyes moved to Rachel. There, in front of school gates, reporters, enemies, and half of New York watching through a lens, Luca Moretti let his mask crack just enough for her to see the truth. Then he looked back at the cameras. The reason I am still standing. Silence. Rachel's throat tightened. Noah looked up at her. Mom? She squeezed his hand. Luca turned toward the school and escorted them inside. No one stopped him. No one dared. Inside, Mrs. Rivera cried when she saw Noah and hugged him like he was her own. Rachel held herself together until she reached an empty classroom. Then the door closed, and she broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. She sat in one of the tiny chairs, covered her face, and cried into her hands. Noah hugged her immediately. I'm okay, Mom. That made it worse. Rachel pulled him close. You're not supposed to have to be okay with this. Luca stood by the door like a guard carved from guilt. Noah looked at him over Rachel's shoulder. Are you going to make them stop? Luca's voice was quiet. Yes. How? Rachel lifted her head sharply. Luca met her eyes before answering Noah. By telling the truth. Rachel went still. What truth? Luca did not look away. All of it. The truth took them to a church. Not one that appeared on tourist maps. An abandoned Catholic church near the harbor. Its stained glass windows cracked. Its altar covered in dust. Its candles freshly lit by men who looked deeply uncomfortable around holy things. Rachel stood in the center aisle with Noah asleep against her shoulder. He had cried himself tired after the school incident, then refused to let go of her. Luca had offered to carry him. Rachel had said no, not because she doubted he would be gentle, because she needed to feel her son's weight. Needed proof he was still hers. No matter what blood, or ledgers, or men in suits claimed. At the altar, Enzo opened an old floor panel. Inside was a metal box. Rachel's mother had hidden the first half of the ledger in Noah's medal. The second half had been hidden in the church where Luca's brother Matteo had last been seen alive. Luca stood beside Rachel as Enzo lifted out the box. His face gave away nothing, but Rachel noticed his hand. It trembled once. Barely. Your brother? She asked quietly. Luca's eyes stayed on the box. He was the only person in my family who believed leaving was possible. What happened to him? Luca's jaw hardened. He fell in love with the wrong woman. Rachel looked at him. Is that what you think this is? His eyes moved to hers. Danger. Pain. Denial. No. But the answer came too quickly. Rachel shifted Noah higher on her hip. Luca. He looked away. The church doors slammed open. Everyone turned. Daniel Adams walked in with his hands raised. Rachel's body went rigid. He looked older. Thinner. Handsome in the cheap, unreliable way that had once fooled her. His coat was wet. His eyes went immediately to Noah. Rachel stepped back. Luca moved in front of her. Daniel laughed bitterly. Still collecting broken things, Moretti? Luca did not react. Rachel felt Noah stir against her shoulder. Daniel's gaze shifted to her. Rachel. Her name sounded wrong in his mouth now. What are you doing here? She asked. Trying to keep you alive. She laughed once, cold. You left us with debt collectors. I left because they would have killed you if I stayed. Luca's voice cut in. You left because Caruso paid you. Daniel's face twitched. Rachel saw it. The lie before the words. Daniel looked at her desperately. It wasn't like that. It never is with men like you. Daniel stepped closer. Every gun in the church lifted. Rachel covered Noah's ear with one hand. Luca's voice was quiet. Do not take another step. Daniel stopped. Then he said the words that changed everything. Noah is not Matteo's son. The church went silent. Luca's eyes narrowed. Daniel looked at Rachel, and for the first time, she saw real guilt. He's mine, Daniel said. But Elena made Caruso believe otherwise. Rachel's breath caught. What? Daniel swallowed. Your mother knew Caruso was looking for Moretti blood. She knew he needed a child to make a claim against Luca's family assets. She planted a false record. Made them think Noah was Matteo's. It kept Caruso watching the wrong door for years. Rachel's knees weakened. Her mother had turned her grandson into a decoy. No, not a decoy. A shield. A terrible, dangerous shield. Luca turned slowly toward Daniel. And you let them believe it. Daniel's face twisted. I was scared. Rachel stared at him. I was scared too, she whispered. Every day, and I stayed. Daniel flinched. Good. Let him. Then another voice echoed from the church entrance. How touching. Vincent Caruso stepped into the candlelight. He was elegant, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal coat and leather gloves. The kind of man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms, not blood feuds. But his smile had no warmth. Behind him came armed men. Luca's men shifted. The church became a held breath. Caruso looked at Rachel. So this is the woman who made Luca Moretti careless. Luca moved slightly in front of her. Caruso smiled wider. There it is, the weakness. Rachel felt Luca's body tense. She had heard people call softness weakness her whole life. Her size, her motherhood, her compassion, her refusal to become cruel. Now this man looked at Luca's protection and thought he had found a wound. Rachel stepped out from behind Luca. His hand moved instinctively, almost catching her, then stopped. He let her stand. Caruso's eyes flickered with interest. Rachel held Noah close and met his gaze. You came all this way for a child who isn't even what you thought he was. Caruso's smile thinned. Rachel continued, voice shaking but clear. You built your war on a dead woman's lie. My mother beat you with a baby necklace and a church floor. For 1 second, Enzo looked like he might smile. Luca did not. He watched Rachel as if she had set the church on fire. Caruso's gaze hardened. Give me the ledger. Rachel lifted her chin. No. Daniel whispered. Rachel, don't. She ignored him. Caruso sighed. Luca, control your woman. The church turned colder. Rachel saw the exact moment Luca almost lost himself. His hand lowered toward his gun. Rachel touched his wrist. Just 2 fingers. He stopped. Every man in the room saw it. The most feared mafia boss in New York halted by the soft touch of a supermarket cashier holding her sleeping son. Caruso saw it too, and his face filled with satisfaction. Then everything happened at once. A shot shattered one of the stained glass windows. Men shouted. Candles fell. Noah woke, screaming. Luca pulled Rachel and Noah behind the stone altar as gunfire erupted through the church. The sound was deafening, chaos trapped under a vaulted ceiling. Glass rained in colored shards across the floor. Rachel covered Noah with her body. Luca covered them both. His coat spread over her back like a dark wing. She felt the impact of him, his breath near her hair. His arm braced beside her. His body, taking the space danger wanted. Noah, Rachel whispered, holding her son tight. Look at me. Only me. Noah sobbed into her chest. Luca looked over the altar, gave 2 sharp commands, then ducked back down. His eyes met Rachel's. For the first time, she saw fear there. Not fear of death. Fear of failing her. The gunfire moved toward the side aisle. Enzo shouted. Daniel, crouched behind a pew, saw a man aiming toward the altar. He looked at Rachel. Then Noah. Then he ran. The shot meant for the altar hit Daniel instead. Rachel screamed. Daniel fell near the steps, clutching his chest. The gunman dropped seconds later, under Enzo's return fire. Rachel started to move. Luca caught her arm. Rachel. He's Noah's father. Luca's face changed. Pain, jealousy, restraint, acceptance. Then he released her. But he came with her. They crawled through broken glass and candle smoke. Rachel reached Daniel as he gasped for breath. No, she whispered. No, you don't get to do this now. You don't get to become brave at the end. Daniel laughed weakly, blood at his lips. I was never brave. Noah sobbed behind Luca, who held him back gently. Daniel looked at his son. I'm sorry, he whispered. Noah cried harder. Rachel pressed her hand over Daniel's wound, even though she knew. Daniel's eyes found Luca. Protect them. Luca's face went still. Then he said, I will. Daniel looked back at Rachel. Elena hid one more thing, he whispered. Rachel leaned closer. Your apartment, he breathed. Behind her photo. Then his eyes went empty. Rachel froze. The church blurred. She had imagined Daniel's death before, in angry moments she was ashamed of. Imagined him gone for good, unable to disappoint Noah again. But grief was not fair. It arrived even when love was gone. It came for the young man she once believed in. The father Noah would never fully know. The coward who had died doing one brave thing. Rachel began to shake. Luca knelt beside her. He did not tell her to move. Did not tell her it was over. Did not touch her until she leaned toward him without realizing. Then his arm came around her. Careful. Strong. A shelter she should not have wanted. Across the church, Caruso tried to escape through the side door. Luca saw him. The softness vanished. He rose. Rachel grabbed his hand. Luca. He looked down at her. She knew what he wanted. Revenge. Blood. An ending, written in the only language his world respected. But Noah was crying. Daniel was dead. The church was full of smoke and broken glass. Rachel shook her head. Not like this. Luca's face tightened with the force of restraint. Caruso disappeared into the rain. Enzo cursed and started after him. Luca lifted one hand. Let him run. Enzo stared. Boss. Luca's eyes stayed on Rachel. Let him think he survived. They returned to Rachel's apartment before dawn. Not because it was safe. Because Daniel's last words had made it necessary. The building was quiet now, guarded at every entrance by Luca's men. The power had returned. Fluorescent hallway lights buzzed overhead as Rachel unlocked her door with trembling hands. Her apartment looked smaller than she remembered. The sagging couch, the chipped kitchen table, Noah's drawings on the fridge, her mother's framed photograph on the wall near the window. Rachel stood before it. Elena Adams smiled from behind dusty glass, younger than Rachel was now, eyes full of secrets she had carried alone. Luca stood behind Rachel, silent. Noah slept in Enzo's arms in the hallway, exhausted from crying. Rachel lifted the frame from the wall. Behind it was a small square cut into the plaster. Inside was an envelope. Rachel opened it. A letter. Okay. And a final photograph. Her mother holding baby Noah. On the back, in familiar handwriting. For Rachel, when the men who worship power finally learn what women will do for love. Rachel unfolded the letter. My beautiful girl, if you are reading this, then the past has found you. I am sorry. I tried to bury it deep enough that you and Noah would never have to carry it. There are men in this city who believe blood gives them ownership. They are wrong. Noah belongs to you. Not to Daniel. Not to the Morettis. Not to the Carusos. Not to any war. The ledger is not just evidence. It is insurance. Use it only when you have someone powerful enough to make the city listen and broken enough to understand mercy. If Luca Moretti is near you, do not trust him too quickly. But do not mistake the monster they made him into for the boy I once saved. He was wounded, frightened, angry at the world, but he still cried when he thought no one could hear him. That means there is something left to save. Rachel pressed the letter to her mouth. A sound escaped her, part sob, part breath. Luca had gone completely still. Rachel turned. He looked shattered in the quietest possible way. What did she say? He asked. Rachel walked to him and handed him the letter. He read it without moving, but his eyes changed. Whatever Elena Adams had given him 20 years ago, he had kept buried under power, violence, silence, and expensive suits. Now Rachel watched it surface. The boy in the laundromat. The one who cried when no one could hear. Luca closed his eyes. Rachel touched his hand. This time, he did not stop himself from holding on. Just for a moment. Just long enough for both of them to understand something had shifted. Not forgiven. Not healed. But opened. The key from the envelope fit a storage locker beneath the building. Inside was not more evidence. It was a server drive. Files. Names. Financial records. Video. Every secret Elena Adams had collected before her death. Enough to bury Vincent Caruso. Enough to expose judges, captains, prosecutors, businessmen. Enough to start a war. Or in one. Rachel looked at the drive in Luca's hand. What happens if this goes public? Luca's voice was quiet. People die. And if it doesn't, more people die. Rachel nodded slowly. Then we do it differently. Luca looked at her. She almost smiled despite everything. You said I make motherhood look like defiance. Maybe it's time your world learned from a mother. 3 days later, Rachel Adams walked into a federal courthouse in Manhattan wearing a navy dress, her curls pulled back, her body full and beautiful and unapologetically visible beneath the cold morning lights. Luca Moretti walked beside her. Not in front of her. Not behind. Beside. The media had been waiting since dawn. So had Caruso's men. Black SUVs lined the street. Federal officers stood at the courthouse steps. Rain fell hard enough to blur the skyline. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. Rachel held Noah's hand. Luca's men surrounded them, but not too close. At Rachel's request, she wanted the cameras to see her. Not hidden. Not ashamed. Not carried into safety by a dangerous man. Walking. Choosing. A reporter shouted, Miss Adams, are you testifying against Vincent Caruso? Rachel did not answer. Another shouted, Mr. Moretti, are you cooperating with federal authorities? Luca's expression gave nothing away. At the top of the steps, Vincent Caruso appeared from a black sedan. He looked untouched by the church, elegant, smiling, surrounded by lawyers. His eyes found Rachel. Then Noah. Then Luca. You should have stayed in your apartment, he called. The cameras swung. Rachel stopped. Luca's body tensed beside her. She could feel the storm in him, the need to move. To end this his way. Rachel looked at him. Don't. One word. He stopped. Caruso laughed softly. That is what they do, Luca. Mothers. They make men hesitate. Luca's voice was calm. No. Caruso's smile faded. Luca looked at Rachel, then back at him. They make men choose. The courthouse doors opened behind them. Federal agents stepped out. But they did not move toward Luca. They moved toward Caruso. For the first time, Vincent Caruso's confidence broke. One agent held up a warrant. The media erupted. Caruso looked at Luca in disbelief. You gave them everything? Luca's expression was unreadable. No, he said. Then he looked at Rachel. She did. Caruso turned his fury on her. You stupid woman. Do you know what you've done? Rachel felt fear rise. Then Noah squeezed her hand. She lifted her chin. I protected my son. The words were simple, but they cut through every camera, every rumor, every man who thought power only belonged to those willing to destroy. Caruso lunged. Luca moved instantly, placing himself between Caruso and Rachel. Federal agents tackled Caruso before he reached them. Still, Luca did not take his eyes off Rachel. She saw the question there. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Only then did he breathe. Caruso was dragged past them, screaming threats that rain swallowed before they reached the street. The cameras kept flashing. A reporter yelled, Mr. Moretti, what happens now? Luca looked at Rachel. The whole city waited for the feared Mafia Boss to speak. But Luca said nothing. Rachel did. Now, she said, my son goes home. And somehow, that became the headline. Not Luca's violence. Not Caruso's arrest. Not the ledger. A mother taking her child home. Weeks passed. New York changed in ways Rachel could see, and ways she could not. Judges resigned. Detectives disappeared from precincts. Politicians gave nervous press conferences. The Caruso family fractured under indictments, betrayals, and old enemies suddenly brave enough to speak. Luca's name appeared everywhere, but not in handcuffs. Never quite there. Like smoke. Rachel returned to work for exactly one shift before her manager cried, hugged her, and told her a trust had been created in her name for victims of organized intimidation. Rachel knew whose money it was. She also knew better than to accept without a fight. So she fought. Luca sat across from her in the closed supermarket cafe at midnight, wearing a black coat and an expression of patient torment while Rachel read every page of the trust documents. You are impossible, he said. Rachel did not look up. You misspelled responsible. It is clean money. I'm checking. My attorneys fear you. They should. Luca leaned back, and for the first time since she had known him, Rachel saw the edge of a real smile. It changed his face, made him devastating in a way danger never had. Rachel looked away too quickly. Noah adjusted better than either of them expected. Children, Rachel learned, were not fragile in the way adults feared. They were honest. They needed truth, made small enough to hold. Daniel had died protecting him. Grandma Elena had loved him. Luca was dangerous, but he had kept his promise. That was enough for Noah to begin sleeping through the night again. For Rachel, sleep came slower. Some nights she woke expecting footsteps, blackouts, knocks from empty apartments, and sometimes, when she opened her bedroom door, Luca was there. Not inside. Never inside. Sitting in the hallway of the penthouse, Rachel had refused to call home, one arm resting on his bent knee, watching the elevator like danger might still arrive, dressed as silence. The first time she found him, she crossed her arms. You know this is creepy. Yes. You have security cameras. Yes. Armed men downstairs. Yes. Then why are you sitting outside my door? His eyes lifted to hers. Because I sleep better here. The honesty stole her anger. Rachel leaned against the doorframe. You don't sleep. No. Luca. His name had become different in her mouth. Les accusations. More ache. He looked away. I know you do not need me outside your door. Rachel said nothing. I know protection can become control. Still, she said nothing. I'm trying to learn the difference. There it was. The slow transformation. Not soft. Never simple. But real. Rachel sat beside him in the hallway. His body went still. She almost laughed. Relax. I'm not proposing. I would not know how to respond if you were. That might be the most honest thing you've ever said. For a while, they sat in silence. The city glowed beyond the windows at the end of the hall. Rachel rested her head against the wall. You scare me, she said. I know. But not the way you did at first. Luca looked at her. Rachel kept her eyes forward. At first I was scared of what you could do to me. Now I'm scared of what I could feel for you. His breathing changed. Just slightly. Rachel. She turned to him. He was so close. Close enough that she could see the faint scar near his eyebrow, the exhaustion under his eyes, the restraint carved into every line of his body. He lifted his hand. Stopped. A familiar hesitation. Rachel looked at his hand, then at him. You can touch me. The words changed him. Not visibly to anyone else, maybe. But Rachel saw it. The controlled collapse of a man who had been starving himself of tenderness for so long that permission felt like mercy. Luca touched her cheek with the backs of his fingers. Gently, reverently, as if she was not fragile, but sacred. Rachel closed her eyes. His thumb brushed one tear she had not meant to shed. I do not know how to love without becoming dangerous, he whispered. Rachel opened her eyes. Then learn. His chaza held hers. And if I fail, then I walk away. Pain crossed his face. But he nodded. That mattered. More than promises. More than gifts. More than black SUVs and men with guns. He nodded because he understood she meant it. Rachel leaned closer. Their foreheads almost touched. Almost. Then Noah's door opened. Mom? Rachel pulled back. Luca closed his eyes like a man accepting divine punishment. Noah stood in the hallway holding his stuffed dinosaur. Are you guys being weird? Rachel laughed. A real laugh. The sound startled Luca so much he looked at her as if she had opened every locked room inside him at once. Yes, Rachel said, wiping her face. A little. Noah looked at Luca. Are you sleeping in the hallway again? Luca straightened. I was guarding. Noah nodded solemnly. With your eyes closed? Rachel covered her mouth. Luca looked deeply offended. I was listening. Sure, Noah said. Then he walked over and climbed directly into Luca's lap. Rachel froze. Luca froze harder. Noah curled against his chest like Luca was not the most feared man in New York, but simply a warm place in a dark hallway. For a long moment, Luca did not move. Then his arms came around Noah, slowly, carefully, as if holding a child was the most dangerous thing he had ever done. Rachel watched his face. The devotion there frightened her, not because it was dark, because it was beautiful, and because it was no longer hiding. Winter arrived early in New York that year. By December, Rachel had moved back to Queens. Not the old apartment. That building carried too many ghosts. Instead, she chose a renovated brownstone, 2 blocks from Noah's school, with a small kitchen, a good lock, and windows that caught morning light. Luca did not buy it for her. He offered. She said no. He argued once. She stared. He stopped. Instead, he helped her negotiate the lease through 3 lawyers who looked terrified of both of them. Rachel returned to work, but not at the supermarket. With the trust money, she had finally agreed to manage, not accept, blindly. Manage. She opened a community legal fund for mothers trapped by debt, intimidation, or men with too much power. She called it Elena House. On opening night, snow fell softly over Queens. Warm light glowed from the windows. Women filled the rooms with their children, their stories, their tired eyes, their cautious hope. Noah ran between tables with cookies. Teresa cried quietly near the kitchen. Enzo pretended not to be emotional and failed. Luca stood outside for most of the evening. Of course he did. Black coat. Snow in his hair. One hand in his pocket. Watching the door. Rachel found him near the steps. You know you're allowed inside. His eyes moved over her. She wore a cream sweater and dark skirt, her curls loose, her body warm and full, and entirely her own beneath the golden light spilling from the windows. You are busy, he said. I am. You are happy. Rachel looked back through the window. Women laughing. Children eating cookies. Noah showing another child his dinosaur. Yes, she said. I am. Luca nodded. Something about his quiet acceptance made her chest ache. He had learned not to enter every room just because he could. He had learned waiting could be love when it was chosen, not imposed. Rachel stepped closer. Snow melted on his shoulders. You can come in, Luca. His eyes searched hers. Are you asking? Yes. The word barely left her mouth before he moved. Not fast. Not like a boss claiming territory. Like a man crossing a bridge he had spent his whole life believing would burn under him. Inside, the room went quiet. Women recognized him. Of course they did. Men like Luca did not become ordinary because they stepped into warm light. But Rachel took his hand. Publicly. Deliberately. The room shifted. Not into fear. Into understanding. Noah ran up and hugged Luca around the waist. You came. Luca looked down, still not fully used to being welcomed by joy. I was invited. Noah grinned. Mom invites people she likes. Rachel coughed. Enzo suddenly became fascinated by the ceiling. Luca looked at Rachel. For once, she did not look away. Later, after speeches and tears and too many cookies, Rachel found Luca standing in the back room beneath a framed photo of Elena Adams. He was staring at it. Rachel joined him. She'd have liked this, Rachel said. Yes. She'd have yelled at you. Yes. Rachel smiled softly. A lot. Luca's mouth curved. A real smile this time. Small. Rare. Enough to ruin her. Rachel turned toward him. I used to think love meant someone would come save me, she said. Then I learned saving myself was the only safe option. Luca listened. You didn't save me, Luca. His face grew still. I know. You protected me. You scared me. You lied to me. You crossed lines. You learned. You stayed when I told you to stay outside. You stopped when I told you to stop. His throat moved. Rachel stepped closer. And somehow, in the middle of all that darkness, you made me feel seen. Luca's voice was barely above a whisper. I have seen you from the beginning. I know. She touched his chest, over the steady beat of his heart. But now I'm letting you. His eyes closed for a second. When they opened, the Mafia Boss was still there. The danger. The power. The man. The city feared. But beneath it stood the boy her mother had saved. The man Rachel had challenged. The soul that had learned love was not possession. Luca bent his head slowly, giving her time to stop him. She did not. Their kiss was quiet. No dramatic music. No thunder. No violence at the door. Just snow falling outside Elena House. Warm light in the windows. And a dangerous man kissing the woman who had made him want to become more than what the world had made of him. His hand settled at her waist with careful devotion. Rachel leaned into him, not because she needed shelter, because she chose this one. When they pulled apart, Luca rested his forehead against hers. I am still dangerous, he said. Rachel smiled through the tears in her eyes. I know. I will still have enemies. I know. I may never be good. Her hand rose to his face. Then be honest. Be loyal. Be careful with us. We'll start there. Luca breathed out like the words had undone him. From the doorway, Noah groaned. Are you guys being weird again? Rachel laughed into Luca's coat. Luca looked over her shoulder at Noah. Yes, he said calmly. Noah made a face. Gross. Then he ran back toward the front room. Rachel shook her head, smiling. Luca watched her smile, as if it was the only inheritance he had ever wanted. Outside, black SUVs waited under falling snow. Inside, Elena House glowed like a promise. And for the first time in his life, Luca Moretti did not stand outside the door like a shadow guarding something he could never touch. He stepped inside. Beside Rachel. Beside Noah. Into the warmth. Into the noise. Into the dangerous, impossible mercy of being loved. And somewhere above the city, as snow softened the rooftops of Queens, the old war finally ended, not with a bullet, not with a crown, not with a man taking power from another man, but with a mother opening the right door, and letting the monster become a man.